if you are looking to get into a strategic partnership, ask yourself why you're doing it and whether it's actually getting you to your objectives.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to those here. We've got a great crowd tonight and those on the webcast. My name is Carrie Damon. I'm the Director of Entrepreneurship Education here at Mars, and I'd like to welcome you to our Meet the Entrepreneurs event with 3 great Cleantech entrepreneurs. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our moderator tonight. Jane Cairns is a senior advisor in our Cleantech team. She's a leader in sustainable innovation. We're really glad that she has joined Mars in the past year. She has 15 years experience in environmental finance, cleantech, and sustainability. She co-founded, grew, and profitably sold a full-service renewable energy company called Clean Energy Development. So she is very much a cleantech entrepreneur and knows very much how to do it and the struggle that clean tech entrepreneurs face. Jane just came back from Japan 3 days ago, and she is experiencing severe jet lag, so if she falls asleep in her chair, we will forgive her just this one time. Welcome, Jane.
Hi. Thanks for that. I'm really glad to have a bit of an excuse for being somewhat stupid tonight. I apologize if the words don't come out quite right. It's 13 hours later there. So anyways, we wanted to start off with a quick icebreaker to get you guys talking a bit and getting to know each other. So if you can just turn around, introduce yourself to everybody at your table, and share a little bit about either the business that you're currently working on or your business idea. Take a few minutes to do that, get to know each other, and then we'll bring the entrepreneurs up and have a chat. Go. All right, everyone, if I can bring you back. That was... Sounds like that was pretty good conversation, but I want to make sure we have enough time with our entrepreneurs. You guys can carry that on at the reception afterwards. So just quickly, so we have Paul Bottero from InMotive, Bruce Townsend from Ecotagious, who saved the day. He's filling in today for Anthony Watanabe, who was sick as a dog, and Jack McDonald from Enermotion. Oh, MacDonnell. Who knew? Apparently not me. So start with you, Paul. So just a little bit of history. Paul and I met a whole bunch of years ago when I was doing my startup, and we crossed paths again here at Mars. He's just completed the testing on his technology. He'll give you the rundown on what that is, but results are outstanding. So we're thrilled to hear that. Can you tell us a little bit about your technology and your company, what you're doing?
Sure, thanks, Jane. So my company has developed an energy savings device for electric motors. Electric motors are used in all kinds of applications and come in all kinds of sizes. We're dealing primarily with industrial electric motors that run from 10 to a few hundred horsepower, fairly large animals, which consume about 45% of the world's power. It's a tremendous amount of electricity that flow through these motors. And they're not very efficient right now. Our device makes them more efficient by allowing you to get by with smaller motors, which of course cost less and also run more efficiently. And it's kind of like putting a transmission on a motor. So if you can imagine, it's the difference of having a one-speed bike and running a one-speed bike. You can get going, but it's not as efficient as having a 10-speed bike. So that would be the simple analogy for what our technology does. It's rather hard to explain otherwise. Probably the best thing to do would be go to our website, which is inmotive.com, and there's a nice animation about how it works. Was there anything else?
Sounds perfect.
Great.
So Bruce and I go back even further than Paul and I. We went to business school together in New York. That was in the days before Cleantech was called Cleantech.
I think you're right,
It's
yes.
kind of sad.
Yes.
It's kind of scary. So he was pretty much the only guy at Columbia that I could talk to about renewable energy and clean technology without getting a totally blank stare. So I feel bond with Bruce. So he's now doing his own clean tech startup and working closely with a group of utilities helping their customers to reduce energy consumption. So want to give us the rundown on that?
Yeah, sure. So Ecotagious essentially helps electrical utilities meet their conservation targets. And we do it using data analytics that identify the right customer candidates for the right conservation programs. And we also generate basically tailored marketing messages for each one of those customers, whether those customers happen to be residential customers or whether they happen to be an industrial customer. So that's what we do, and we basically do it through, again, big data analytics.
Nice. And Jack showed me the coolest thing today. So Popular Science, I'm sure you guys are all aware of this. This is the May issue, hot off the presses, and his company, EnerMotion, won one of 10 invention awards for the magazine. His is for energy, so that's really exciting and really, yeah, it's cool for Mars too.
Thank you.
Give us the rundown.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for everybody for being here. It's an honor to share my story with everyone and to hear the stories from the other two individuals here. EnerMotion is an energy efficiency company, very similar to Paul. Internal combustion engines, everything that's in your car and the buses and trucks out on the road, they're not efficient. They're only about 30 to 33% efficient. That means that if you pour a liter of fuel in that gas tank, only a third of it is used to propel the vehicle from A to B. So what happens to the other 2/3? Well, 1/3 goes out the tailpipe of that vehicle. So what we've done is we've captured that wasted heat, that wasted energy, and we've developed a heating and air conditioning system. We actually produce -degree temperature from very hot exhaust gas. I'm not going to bore you with the details on how we do that, because when we brainstormed this idea about 5 years ago, my engineers on my team told me that they think that this was possible, and I'm just sitting there shaking my head. No way is this going to happen. Well, sure enough, it did, and we do have a working field test unit, and we eliminate idling for those big heavy trucks. You've seen them at the truck stops. They're either idling the main diesel engine to keep the HVAC system running, or they use a diesel auxiliary power unit. No more, folks. Clean air is back.
Yay, little cheer from the audience. So something that's always really interesting to me is why people decide to give up the sort of safe and secure life of a normal job to become entrepreneurs. What made you guys take the leap and, go the uncertain path?
Sure. Want me to start? Yeah. I'm definitely one of those crazy people who took that path. I was professional manager running a Canadian subsidiary of a publicly traded company, had a very stable job. Another business was sold, but I could have stayed in that field, a very comfortable industry. But I decided to try this, mostly because I was bored and wanted a different kind of challenge. But a lot of people thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy for a while too. Maybe I still am, but we don't know yet. But it was certainly it's certainly been very exciting, and I've enjoyed it. Again, the financial rewards aren't nearly as great as they used to be. But when you wake up every morning with a smile on your face, it makes a big difference. And I probably don't know why I did it, and that's probably why I did it. Because if I thought long and hard about it, it wouldn't have made sense on paper. So perhaps you don't need to think so much about it, you just go do it.
Yeah, good point. I think a lot of times if you actually know what you're about to go through, you wouldn't do it. It's a long road.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you don't wake up thinking about all the difficult things. You think about the positive results at the end. Yeah. That's what keeps you going.
Bruce?
Well, I wanted an opportunity to, I'd say, combine my interest in technology, the environment, and energy all into one. That led me to actually working for a fuel cell company for a number of years, which was fantastic. But it was a challenge. As you guys if you guys have followed the sector, it's taken a lot longer than anybody's expected. And in that, I took a step back for a second at some point in there and said, okay, what are we actually trying to do? We're actually trying to take a new technology and put it into an existing application, and at a price point that's much higher than the incumbent technology, and it's very difficult. I said, where is there an opportunity to actually take an existing technology and potentially apply it to a new application? And started thinking about it, and had always had in the back of my mind that I'd like to try something myself. And the right idea came along after some brainstorming with my business partner. And that was the transition point to actually start something up.
Yeah, you know, very similar, and you're going to experience the same thing if you're not already experiencing it right now. And you know, I remember myself sitting out in the audience like this and listening to other individuals, and what possesses somebody to do this? You got to have a screw loose, yeah. So you got to be crazy.
Just
Honestly.
one, just one.
So what he's saying, Paul, is you are crazy.
And you have to be very naive too. And I say that because, as Jane indicates, if you know what you're about to experience and you know what you're going to encounter, and if you know what some of those challenges are and some of the hurdles, you go, no way. I ain't going to do that. No thanks. But you know what? We're passionate and we enjoy what we do and we're dedicated to it and you're committed. So it rolls off your back. You pick yourself up, you dust off, and you go on. And you learn by, and you're going to make a lot of mistakes. And you just learn by them. But yeah, you know, I want to make a difference. I want to have some clean air to breathe, and I want to save some people some money in the process of operating their businesses. And we need goods moved back and forth across the country. And there's a more efficient way to do that, and that's what Entremotion has developed.
So I hear a little bit of a common theme coming out about challenges and you know, things maybe being a little tougher than initially expected when you set out on the path. So what were some of the unexpected challenges or stumbling blocks, things that maybe caused a setback or two as you were heading down the path? Do you want to keep going? Should we mix it up?
I'm okay starting off on that. Two things come to mind. One thing, a very more detailed technical challenge where we, our technology, the IP around our technology is how we synchronize the motion of our transmission. But we required electronics to make that synchronization happen. But the electronics weren't where IP was. It wasn't supposed to be anything complicated. It ended up taking us 10 months to solve that problem. And our entire team was focused on 10 months on that problem. I had my chief engineer soldering chips to, you know, it was a real waste of everyone's resources and almost killed the company. And again, that was one of the things that if I had known about that ahead of time, it might have changed my thoughts about getting into the business. But at the end of the day, we got through it, and you know, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, as they say. And we learned a ton from doing that. But that was definitely an unexpected challenge. At maybe a higher level, and something you guys probably hear a lot of, is the challenges of raising money. I think we've been fairly fortunate in that regard, yet it still takes a heck of a lot longer than you think, a heck of a lot more complicated than you would think. Again, probably best not to dwell on those challenges, just go and do it and find a way to get through it, or else you might never do it.
So with the first stuff, the technical challenge, if you had known in advance that that was going to be there, would you have been able to approach the problem differently? Or was it just a technical problem that needed to be?
I think we didn't appreciate the complexity, and we probably could have resourced ourselves differently and addressed it more effectively if we were more aware of how much of a problem it was. But it wasn't where we were focused. It's not where we hired people. We thought, oh, anybody can do that, right? Give that to mechanical engineer. Probably should have had an electronic engineer on that from the outset, for instance.
Yeah, hindsight.
Yeah, exactly.
But we'll keep going in the same order. I'll change it up eventually.
Okay, excellent. So a couple of areas. I agree. Money took a lot longer to raise than I expected, and to be honest, it was frustrating because that's not where you're creating the value. That's basically a zero-sum game. You're getting money in. You're not creating value within the organization, which is really derived from the customers and demand for what you are building, and building a team to actually deliver on that. So that was a frustrating part that I found. It was a big challenge. The second one is you put together a team to address the challenge that you have defined as best as you could at the onset, and you find that that challenge may morph. And your team composition, therefore, will change over time as well, because you're going to be working on different problems. And so, therefore, you have to, as a team, you have to take on roles that you weren't expecting to take on, bring in skill sets that you weren't expecting to bring in. So, anyhow, a challenge. So that's a human interaction side. The other one is a human interaction side, but this was more of a challenge on the customer side. Is we were getting some good traction with some customers, but we didn't understand the complexity that was involved within the customer's organization in actually executing the sale. And it actually involved, for what we do, we actually require data from our customers, which we then analyze and provide back value in terms of services and solutions and so on. But actually, we would be selling to one part of the organization, who would then have to go and request the information from the IT or the CIS part of the organization. And that process of actually getting that information released out to us took longer and was more difficult than we expected. And it was unexpected. We didn't anticipate that. Although, in hindsight, of course, it's obvious. But at the time, it wasn't.
Yes, Bruce has articulated the team challenge, and that is going to be a challenge for every single one of you that does go down this path, and of course money too. And we've all encountered that, and you're all going to encounter it too. And when you think you have enough, you never have enough. So money's the big one. The other aspect of the human interaction is your family. And you are going to challenge yourself, and you're going to challenge the support of your family, and having that in your corner is going to make the difference. And it is going to help you get up in the morning and get you motivated, and hopefully you go to sleep with a smile on your face. But having family support is very important.
Definitely noticing a couple of common threads through that. Things taking longer than expected. I think every entrepreneur can vouch for that. It always takes twice as long as you think it will. And the challenges of raising money. So let me delve into that one a little bit. So can I get you guys to talk about, in as much detail as you want to share, sort of how you financed the company, types of places that money came from, the decision to go from bootstrapping to actually bringing money in, if you have friends and family money, some of the stress that goes along with, playing with the money of people that you know. So can you guys each talk a little bit about some of the thinking around financing, fundraising, where to get it, when to get it? Yeah. Let's mix it up.
Sure.
Go, Jack.
Oh boy, where do you start? Well, look in your own pockets right now. Whatever you got in your pockets, hang on to it. Don't buy another Tim Hortons coffee. We've raised $2.2 million, and we're in our 5th year of operation. We're a little more down the path in the startup mode, but I'm still pre-revenue. I'm not selling anything yet. That's the holy grail. We're trying to get to that marketplace there, and where we're commercializing our box, our product. So the $2.2 million, $1 million of that is a grant from the federal government, from Sustainable Development Technology Canada. And I won that more than 2 years ago. It was an 8-month due diligence process. Due diligence meaning, they look at your business, they look at your team, they look at the technology worldwide, like how does it compare against other existing technology or emerging technology. It took 8 months, we won that. I have to raise money to unlock that $1 million. So I'm always doing that. I'm always in investment mode. The other money has come from a couple of provincial programs and a couple of other federal programs. And I got to tell you, you got to go after these because they are very valuable. Quite frankly, there's been a couple of programs that if they weren't in existence, I wouldn't be here. The company wouldn't be here. So thank you, Canadian government, and the provincial government too. I have 34 shareholders in the company. That's a lot. I went to family and friends after we built our prototype in 2009, when I knew it was going to work. Now, my chief technology officer told me that it wasn't going to work the next day, and lo and behold, it didn't. That would work and that wouldn't work. Well, a couple of years of learning that, you gain confidence. You start to mitigate the risk of you taking that technology to the marketplace. As you mitigate that risk, you attract more savvy investors that are willing to put up a little more money because you've been able to eliminate some of that risk. But you got to start somewhere. Start with the family and friends, which is what I did, and then we go out and we do dog and pony shows, we do presentations, and you tell anybody that listens to you for 30 seconds. And before you know it, you're 5 years gone and $2.2 million later, and we're still here.
Excellent. Bruce?
So very similar. The funding that's available from the provincial and federal governments is actually has been of great assistance to us. We've probably accessed about 4 different sources of funding that way. NRC IRAP, the SR&ED claims, there is some funding through some commercialization assistance programs, as well as also, for example, youth employment and so on programs. So basically we've tapped kind of every lever that's possible that way. The founders have put in some money, so we put in some money to get this going. When we had enough traction that we felt comfortable, we then went out to friends and family and asked friends and family, which is always a stomach churning process. And someone actually gave me some advice at some point, which I took to heart, and it made me feel a lot better when I was going out begging. And it was actually just to, in this case, we basically opened it up to almost all of our friends and family that we felt comfortable doing so too. So we used some judgment there. But we basically said, listen, there's a great opportunity, but it's high risk and high reward, and you have to be ready to, you have to be willing to accept a 70% chance that you're going to lose all of your money in the next 3 months. And as long as they were willing to meet that criteria, that was basically one of the criteria that we were asking from them before we would, quote, let them invest. Because we wanted them to be absolutely certain that they understood how high risk it was. And that was effective enough for us. So that's how we did it.
Wow. 30% chance, it's pretty good odds.
Yeah, I
want to give my investors a 30% chance.
I exaggerated.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, we were lucky enough to skip the friends and family stage. I had some, I'd say, friendly angels that we went to first. After funding the very early development ourselves, I have 2 other partners. So we were able to skip that because I can imagine the pain and the frustration and the challenges, the sweat, the agony. But instead, the friendly angels are, of course you feel the same level of responsibility. It's just, you don't necessarily see them every day like you do your family and friends. And very, very similar to these gentlemen, I also leveraged a number of government programs. Was I telling you, Jane, I think we're 15 of 24, 16 of 25, something like that, in government grants that we've applied for and have won. And everything from, $10,000 to pay for a half of a person's salary for a few months to $600,000 insert grant. So we're very active in the grants front. We made it a best practice internally to get good at grants because, as you guys have pointed out, particularly for Cleantech, particularly in Ontario, there's a lot of money available compared to other sectors and other technology areas, perhaps. We've also made it a best practice of maximizing shred. We're very shreddable what we do. I imagine you guys probably are as well. And shred can pay for, probably works out to, I think, about 45% of your development costs, which is a big number. So you layer that on top with the other grants. And I think we're down to probably about 30 cents on the dollar in terms of what we pay for developing our technology. So that's, that's one of the ways you stay afloat, and especially in Canada where capital is scarce, you find ways to get by, and the government is very helpful. So yes, thank you, feds and the province. Some people even get money out of the municipalities. So
Before you, can you, or I can do it, but do you want to just give a 30-second overview of what SHRED is for anybody out there who doesn't know?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I skipped over that. SHRED is the Scientific Research and Experimental Design. Yeah, I just know the acronym. What it is it's a tax credit or rebate program where the government, federal government, in order to incentivize companies to do research and development, or experimental design as they call it, they'll give you back a percentage of your spend on research and development activities. What that is coming around to, because they are changing the program now, is pretty much just to pay for engineers and other technical people's time, technicians, researchers, scientists, that type of thing. They'll pay for some contractors, they'll pay for materials, a bit of capital expenditures as well, but primarily it's about making sure you hire people, because of course that's good for increasing the tax base. It's great for political capital as well for the government in power at the time. So there's a lot of reasons why they want to do this, but the reason they'll say, of course, is that we want to attract these companies that will hire engineers and develop and grow and be the next RIM or the next pick a successful company. So that's the intent behind it. Other countries do this, but I believe Canada has one of the best, if not the best, program of this kind.
If I can jump in just for a second to chime in, I found that the program is actually very progressive. And they will try very hard to make it easy for you to access this tax rebate. Now you have to keep in mind, this is money that's coming out of your pocket first. You don't get reimbursed until after your tax return has been filed. But having said that, you can typically go through and request from them a pre-approval or a pre-assessment process where they will come in, they will take a look at the activities that you're actually undertaking, and they will evaluate whether it would be likely to be eligible for a rebate under this SHRED program. So I found them very easy to work with. I don't know what the experience has been for you guys.
Yep.
And from a startup's perspective, it's nice. If you're, if you are a profitable company and you're actually paying taxes, then it's
a tax credit, so you pay less tax.
So you pay less tax.
Right.
But if you're a startup with,
they actually write you a check.
Yeah. Cash in the bank.
Yeah.
So,
It's a good feeling.
It is. We're getting ours in a few days, so we're pretty excited about it.
It's nice when the checks come in as opposed to going out.
Yeah, it's a really big check, so it's heavy. And it was one other thing I wanted to point out. It's escaping now. If it comes back to me, I'll remind you guys later about SHRED. Anyway, we can move on.
Sounds good. So I'm going to change tax a little bit. So it's kind of a cheesy question, but it's something that always interests me. So in hindsight, if you could do this again, two questions. What skills do you wish that you had early on that you've probably, developed the hard way? And what's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew then? They're kind of related questions. It's your turn, Bruce.
So the skill that I'm still developing, and that I would say is of continued value, is the ability to actually test very quickly. So to get something out as quickly as possible with customers to see if there is a market interest for something. And we're getting much better at doing that very quickly and very easily, and testing and validating our basically the market opportunity and the customer interest. But it's not like we were perfect at it the first time we came out. And for us, for the type of business that we're in, it's very effective for us because we can basically go out and test the commercial and customer interest in it before having to develop all of what we anticipate the customers wanting to need or wanting to have.
So it's basically the lean startup idea. Go out, before you develop something, figure out what your customer actually wants.
It is, and the author of that book has done a fantastic job at articulating that process.
Yeah.
Skill I wish I had, I wish I was an engineer. It would have made my life a lot easier. It would have taken me less time to understand what the heck my inventor was talking about when he explained it to me the first time. But I'm only partially being serious. I wish I was actually an engineer, and being a lawyer would actually help in a lot of times too, particularly when negotiating financing. But seriously, I guess the skill or maybe the experience I wish I had was a deeper knowledge of the industries that we're now playing in. And I guess to answer the second part of your question of what I know now, or what
what you know now that you wish you'd known then.
Right, is what industry I would have ended up in, because then that would have been very helpful. I would have spent less time. We did a pivot a few years ago, so to actually know where you'd end up, that would have cut a lot of time out of our business development cycles anyway. But you learn a lot going through the process. So at the end of the day, I don't think I regret any of the steps that we made, but it certainly would have been a lot easier if we had our business plan that we're going to market with now all figured out 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, not that business school teaches you a whole lot about being an entrepreneur, but I didn't even bother taking the entrepreneurship class at business school. So, had I known what I was going to do.
There you go. Yeah.
Jack?
Well, it relates to one of the biggest challenges that we all face and that you'll face is the money. And bottom line is people will invest in people. You can have a great technology, you can have a great widget, but when it comes right down to it, especially in a startup mode, the investors, the shareholders that come into your company, they're going to invest because of you. So if I had known 5 years ago what I know now, because I've been in front of a lot of individuals, you have to know what motivates them from an investment standpoint. And everybody, there's different investor classes out there, just like there's different investment funds. So, spend some time understanding the investor and what's motivating the investor, because you can speak to that and be very honest and be very truthful. Don't overpromise and underdeliver on what your mini milestones are as you proceed for 3 months, for another 6 months, and so on and so forth. Because it all comes down to trust. So be very aware of that, and be very aware of the personalities that you're speaking to.
So we've talked a reasonable amount about the money side of things, and sort of bringing money in from investors. But let's have a quick chat about the other side of the business, which is bringing it in from customers. So, startups out there, all three of you are dealing with big companies. So can you speak a little bit about how a startup or a small company deals with some of the big companies that you're dealing with, multinationals, utilities, not known necessarily for being the most innovative groups out there? Jack?
Sure. Well, we're dealing with a number of different large customers, and my go-to-market strategy is to engage customers. You have to have a very clear go-to-market strategy, and that's one of the elements of your business that you have to very clearly convey to your investors. So we signed recently the world's largest transportation company to trial one of our units. We have also met with a number of large defense contractors, billion-dollar organizations. And then in our specific target market, we've met with trucking companies. One of the trucking companies is an investor in the company. The president of that company is also an investor. He's also a board member of our board. And OEMs, the original equipment manufacturers. So actually I'm out to Seattle Monday and Tuesday to speak to and present our Hyperbox to one of the largest truck manufacturers in the world. And so there's a number of different levels there. And again, it's coming back to, excuse me, understanding what's in it for them. Why do they want to talk to us? And why would a trucking operator want to put my box on the back of his truck? So you just have to, understand what that requirement is and address it. Be very clear when you address it. So we're really right across the gamut here as far as customers, and just know your customer almost as good as they know themselves, if not better.
If you can get a warm introduction to someone, use it as much as you can. That's always the first. I mean, number one, if you know who you're trying to go and talk to within a customer, that's fantastic. If you don't know the direct person, if you get a warm introduction some way, then do so. You can always cold call as a last option. But in getting that warm introduction, you typically need of course, the references, and you guys all know this, but basically, the more you start talking to people about what you're working on, whether it is someone who's related to the field that you are actively pursuing or not, the bigger your network becomes, the easier it becomes to get a warm introduction, and the more references you can then start relying on to provide you with some credibility, right? So that would be my advice.
Helps open the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Our space similarly is very large companies. The smaller companies are still only multi-billion-dollar market cap size. So, the industries we're targeting are highly consolidated. So, as such, there's only so many players. So, it's very important for us to be very strategic with our introductions. I do a tremendous amount of research. LinkedIn is a great tool for that, by the way. I don't talk to anybody now without finding everything I can about them online, particularly on LinkedIn. And as such, we try to target as high as possible with the right people through warm introductions wherever possible. We tend to architect our approach through the organization as well, know the organizational chart, what the right buttons to push with people are, and try to understand what's driving them. Because Jack, as you alluded to previously, it's hard for us in our position to really understand what they're thinking. And one of my great advisors, a Mars advisor, it was very fond of telling me that people at the other end of the table in these corporations aren't making a decision because they like you or your technology, or even because your technology can help their company. They're making a decision because it helps their careers. And if you always remember that, then you'll understand what their motivation is. That really stuck with me. I'll never forget that. And it's really, it helped us, I think, in some of our discussions with these companies. Try to understand what's motivating them. And ultimately, it's their career. It's the money, yes, but ultimately, it's moving up through their organization. So getting the right person who not only you can help their career, but they can actually help you by being influential inside the organization at the right time. When all the other stars are aligned, then something can happen in a big organization. Otherwise, it can be very challenging and take a heck of a lot of time.
So quick change in tack again. So can you talk just briefly about some of the pros and cons of starting a business in Toronto or Ontario or Canada? Sometimes we're seen as being great on the innovation side of things, not necessarily as great on the commercialization side. Is that true? Is Ontario a great place to start a business? Are there challenges? Pros, cons, being in Canada? You guys pick.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Well, thank you so much. Of course, it's a great place to start a business. I mean, you've got access to resources. If your idea is good enough, it will shine. I wouldn't let that be a factor as to whether you start or don't your company. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to pass the ball.
Remember I said I wasn't going to sugarcoat anything?
I remember.
There's absolutely a tremendous amount of resources at your disposal, and it's up to you to make sure that you're going through all of those different avenues and tapping into all of those resources. But quite honestly, it is a real challenge to raise money in Canada. And like I said, if it wasn't for some of those government programs, and the government, you need to create jobs. We have to enhance the economy. We have to enhance the economy in Ontario. Wherever you are in Toronto, I'm out in Bolton, and it is a tough go to raise money in Canada. And over the last 5 years, I've seen the models of the VCs, I've seen the venture capitalists, I've seen the angel models. They've all evolved and they've changed. About 4.5 years ago, I went to one VC down here on Bay Street, and I asked them for a checklist. I said, this is who we are. I know we're very, very early. We're years away from revenue, but can you supply a checklist to me? And I'll do my best to check off all those boxes and come back to you in 2 years. Jack, that's a great idea. So we did that. Spent about 2 hours. I went back in 2 years. No, that checklist, things have changed, Jack. Okay, fair enough, things have changed. Now what? So I've found that the angels have become VCs, the VCs have become institutional banks. And then the institutional banks, well, you know the profits that the RBCs and CIBCs and everybody else are holding close to their, wherever they hold it in their mattress or whatever. But it's a real challenge, and just be very aware of that. So don't be afraid to go elsewhere. And I'm in the US right now looking for cash.
Yeah, well, Toronto's not Silicon Valley. It's a great point. It's definitely harder to raise money here than other areas, although better perhaps than other parts of the world or even North America. So I'm perhaps a little bit more optimistic, but you know, it really all depends on your contacts, the industry you're in. This is a great place to be to find talent in my space. Lots of engineering talent, lots of technical talent, and very inexpensive compared to Silicon Valley. So that would be the trade-off. So you know, in the total equation of things, I would say, yeah, it's not a bad place, and certainly for us. You know, I can only speak from my perspective. I'm sure it varies quite a bit industry by industry.
Okay, so it's probably time to start throwing it out to the audience for questions. Before I do that, though, quickly, do you have like just a little bit of parting advice that you can share with these guys? One thing that they should be taking away about being a clean tech entrepreneur.
Sure. I'll start, because I did remember what I wanted to say about Shred. Do it yourself. Don't pay somebody 25 or 30% fees to do it, because a lot of people get literally robbed that way. We just pay our accountant a few $1,000s to review it, and it works just fine. And we have no problems with Shred. Don't be scared. The CRA is actually very friendly, as you pointed out. Yeah.
Very progressive.
Yeah, but a parting thought, and it's consistent with my theme, you know, if you think too much about it, you're probably not going to do it. So if you're really passionate about entrepreneurship, don't weigh the pros and cons. Don't make a big laundry list of all the problems and challenges. You'll never do it. So unless you want to scare yourself out of doing it, in which case, go ahead and do that. But if you want to be an entrepreneur, go for it.
Focus on the customer would be mine. You know, you can spend as much time as you want staring down your navel or working on the technology that you're developing and talking to investors. But ultimately, the person who's going to be deciding whether you guys are successful or not are the customers. So get out there. I think what you'll probably find, and you're probably finding it right now, is that as soon as you start talking to your potential customers and understanding their needs and so on, what you are developing will shift very, very quickly. The good news is that it will probably shift in a direction that will answer a question as to whether you can build something and develop something that is going to be of interest to them or not. And you will get there much faster. And it may be that you have to kill your idea, but the beauty of it is that you've killed the idea very, very quickly. If not, you're going to get to a commercially viable product much sooner than you would otherwise. And it's always much easier whenever you're going to raise money or you're talking to your team about going in a certain direction. It's always much easier to do it when you've got customers lined up.
Anything you want to share?
Yeah, for sure. You know, all the above, and always coming back to the human element. Don't take no for an answer. And I know you've heard this before, but it's so true. And there's going to be a lot of naysayers out there. Even friends in your little inner circle that are going to just look at you and shake their head, and say, you know what, man, you're freaking out to lunch. That is not going to work. Screw you. It is going to work, and I'm going to make it work, and I'm going to bring the team together that's going to make it work. So don't take no for an answer. All you salespeople out there, you know that, and you'll hit 100 no's before you hit that one yes. And it's a roller coaster ride. But boy, when you're up here, man, life feels good. You go down here, you get bruised, you get kicked, you pick yourself up, and you're back up there again because you know there's going to be another rise, and just go for it, man. Don't stop.
That's an awesome place to throw it out to the audience for questions. We have a bunch of people on the webcast, so if you can use the microphones, that would be great.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Question for all of you, if I may. Is it really that it takes that long to get the money, or is it that we're all by nature angsty, impatient, and we all want it yesterday? You know, if we could dial somebody directly and say, hi, I need a check for X amount, 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, make it happen. And if they say to you it's going to take so many working days, weeks, months, what have you. Thank you.
I'll just give my top of the head kind of answer there is, I think it's the ratio between how long it takes to do things like core development and attain customers compared to how long it takes the money that seems out of whack. Because you're right. I mean, why should anybody write you a check in a matter of minutes? Although it does happen. I've done big six-figure financings on a handshake, but you got to get lucky with the right people. It can take months and months to raise just a few $1,000s otherwise. So yeah, I think it's the ratio, and that seems to be out of whack because you know how long it takes and how much money you can burn through doing developments, and then it can take equally long to raise the money. And you're always thinking about your cash burn, always having to fund ahead. You never really have a nice long runway, and that's frustrating because you made an excellent point, Bruce, about that not being value add. You don't feel like you're helping your company. Of course you are because you're keeping it afloat, but you don't really feel like you're doing what you're meant to be doing, which is develop a good product, bring it to market, impress your customers, and then ultimately, have a huge exit where everybody's happy. But fortunately, you need those shareholders, and you got to get the money. And
can I get you to use the mic so that the people online can hear it? Sorry.
Is this mic?
To me personally, spending time getting the money, as you say, wouldn't make me feel like I'm doing the best that I could for the company. That's not my personal interest. That's why there's somebody who's going to be doing that, not me. But when you say, yeah, I agree with you.
okay.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, go ahead. Do you want to?
No, I was just pointing at that gentleman there.
So my question is like, when you are raising money, right? How would you decide or how would you determine the percentage of shares that you are going to give up?
The eternal question.
Throw that one over here.
So, go ahead, Bruce.
It's like it's somewhat like the bazaar, right? I mean, it's just like it's a barter system. It's you can try to set a price, but ultimately, if you have no takers, you're going to be dropping that price, and price isn't the only condition and term for the deal. I mean, part of it is there are a lot of considerations. Number one, to be honest, when you're dealing with friends and family, at least when I was looking at it, I wanted to make it, there was high risk, and I wanted to make sure that they were going to be rewarded for it. And so you want to always make sure that you're leaving enough space so that the next round is not going to be dilutive. Meaning, you don't want to price yourself appropriately. The risk of overpricing yourself is that you have a down round next and everybody gets grumpy and upset. And so that would just be one consideration for you.
Do you guys want to jump in on that at all?
No, that, there's a term that's used, it's valuation, and it's determining the value of your company. And the value of your company is based on a number of metrics, a number of elements: the team, the technology, your intellectual property portfolio, how much money you've raised. So you try to look at what the market is doing, look at similar companies in your space, and then get out and talk to Mars, get out and talk to Jane, get out and talk to some other people that are in the space that know. And then you can start to create some tangible value around who you are and what you're doing. And when the market accepts that, when somebody buys a share at that value, you're off and running.
Go ahead.
To Jane and the gentlemen, thank you very much. Great session. It seems that Cleantech has had a history of being in a rather carnivorous jungle where they've had two traditional enemies, big auto, big energy, and now they have a third because recently one of the BRIC countries has announced as part of their 5-year plan, they're going to buy up all the failed clean tech companies in the US, taking their IP and then trying to make that work. How can any of you make your companies as bulletproof or not as tasty for those traditional carnivores?
I know. Do you see them as carnivores? I'm looking at Jack, because Jack works with Big Auto all the time, right?
Yes and no, and you have to be very careful, and you have to be selective, and it comes back to a point that Bruce made earlier about customers, and they can be your customers. You know, when as the CEO of a company, and when we're talking about valuation of the company and the shareholders, you want to look at the exit strategy of your company. So they may be part of that exit strategy. Are they going to acquire you? Are they going to acquire a slice of your company? Do you want to have them as a joint venture partner where they will help you get into that market space that you need to get into? But from our perspective, I went to one of the world's largest patent firms 5 years ago with the idea of what we were doing, told them that I couldn't pay anything, like they hadn't heard that before. And, you know, and smiled at them, and it was cute, and convinced them, yeah, you know what? Yeah, sure, we'll do this for free. So that free service is our IP and filing patents, and we're filed in Canada, the US, Europe, China, Australia, and India. And they're specific markets for a reason. And that comes back to your point about blocking. You want to create, if you can, a veil of secrecy around your real key ingredients on whatever box and product you have. But that's where you're creating some value in the company too. So it's a double-edged sword, and you have to be very careful on how you deal with them. And it comes back to understanding what's motivating them in the first place. And you do have to be careful. Did I answer?
Go ahead.
Hello, and thank you for the discussion today. I guess I have 2 screws loose because this is my second round going at this thing. But first round, it's a really 2-part question. First round was, I think, taking a lot of learning from that was trying to engage in strategic partnerships, which led into investment. Just want to open up to the questions of the panel is, what are your thoughts on strategic partnerships, and how do you protect yourself from them kind of killing the company in that respect? And then second question really opens up to IP protection. Mention of BRIC countries, a lot of opportunities in China, Brazil. And how do you guys think about protecting yourselves in IP in those countries? Thank you.
I'll try. Yeah, we're currently dealing with some large multinationals going down the road towards those kind of strategic partnerships, and it is frightening. Absolutely, you have to worry about getting too close to them too quickly, ensuring that your IP is protected, that the right kind of agreements are in place, and that you don't give them too much of an inside track that could otherwise preclude other potential partners. So I think you just got to be very aware of it going in. It certainly helps to be conferring with people who have done this kind of thing before extensively. Unfortunately, you probably have to talk to lawyers too. It's definitely the kind of thing that you can't know enough about or have enough experience or background with. So if you've done it before, even better. You've probably already got some of those experiences. But yeah, that's how we insulate ourselves. And your question around IP protection, help me out, Jane. Was it about how to protect your IP during the process, or?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And if you're working with a strategic, how do you still protect your portfolio and maybe share it at the same time? Yeah,
and again, you can paper that a bunch of different ways. And also, of course, have a very strong, ultimately you need, I think, very strong patent protection, because no matter what you put on paper, they, of course, don't necessarily have to abide by that, and they can just say, sue us, and, of course, they almost always have deeper pockets than you. So having strong IP, and even then, you can have very strong IP, and you still need a lot of money. So I guess ultimately, what you need is a certain amount of trust. You have to trust your partner, and if you don't trust them going in, like any relationship, you shouldn't proceed. So trust them, just to be safe, ensure that the deal's papered properly, and just to be extra safe, make sure your IP is in as impeccable condition as you can afford.
And I'm going to add a quick point on that one. So a lot of the larger companies, the corporate strategics, have reputations for being either good or bad partners. So do your research, figure out what people out there are saying about partnering with these companies. You know, some of them swipe IP, most of them don't, but you can do a lot of due diligence, figure out who the good guys and the bad guys are out there, or at least, you know, get yourself well educated so that you have a hope of partnering with the right companies. Bruce, do you want to speak a little bit to IP? Because you're a bit of a different
animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can. So for us, we develop analytics. So all of our intellectual property essentially is in the algorithms that we develop. That's one side. It's also how to manage large amounts of data and process it. But for us, it's a trade-off between trying to keep it a trade secret and therefore out of the eyes of everybody, because we don't actually have to disclose our algorithms to anybody. We can basically just provide the results that come out of it to the customer, versus patenting it, which means you actually expose it, but you protect it. And one of the issues being, I think the US just recently changed over to a first-to-file patent system, which essentially means, if I understand it correctly, even if you invent something prior to someone else, if you have not filed a patent on it, and someone else comes along and files a patent on it, they have the rights to that invention and that innovation. So that it's a trade-off, and you, number one, think long and hard about it, do your research. Number two, talk to experts in the field about what to do about your intellectual property, because it is not, there's no silver bullet for many types of technologies and organizations like yours. On the strategic partner side, if I can just chime into that one, because that's another good question. If you are looking to get into a strategic partnership, ask yourself why you're doing it and whether it's actually getting you to your objectives quickly. You may have a number of milestones that you're trying to meet. For us, we wanted to prove our value proposition, prove our technology, and so on. For us, that was our first milestone, and so we wanted to go straight to the end customer who's going to be using this, and we wanted to be selling directly to them. Now that we've proven it, we can then now start looking at other ways of getting to market, but the objective there is to start growing our business as quickly as possible. So that is the objective. So just be very clear as to why you are entering into a kind of a strategic partnership with someone. You should be very clear about what you're trying to do, and you should just be driving towards that one result with that organization.
Good. Yeah, go ahead.
Good evening. My question is about milestones. I wanted to know what milestones that you set for yourselves, and were there any hidden steps that you found that you needed to take, and if you could speak to that.
Yeah, if you don't mind, that's a great question, and it's very important part of the startup ingredient and the startup mode that you're going to find yourself in. It's always very important to set milestones and goals for yourself, to the point where what we've done is we have a very specific work plan in place that tracks our technology evolution. So we've gone through, the early research and development phase. We're in field test mode right now, but we've keyed in on very specific performance aspects of the box itself. So that's one work plan. Then I have a work plan that I use for our business development pipeline. But it's important to set those milestones because you need to achieve them. And part of achieving that is enhancing the valuation that you've determined your company is worth. And it's important to track that, because when you do go to the investor that might write a check for $50,000 or $5 million, you need to be able to show progress. And the best way of doing that is documenting a work plan, documenting how you achieve those milestones. And they don't have to be huge milestones. Make them attainable, but you know what you need to do. It's like a work breakdown structure. As a project manager, you have to break down those elements of those tasks and subtasks. Do that for yourself, because it shows that you are executing. And you can deviate a little bit. You can pivot every now and then. But you have to know why you're pivoting. And you have to know after you pivoted. Is that a word? Yeah. Sure, it's a word.
It is now.
It is now, yeah. What caused that pivot, and what are the results now? So yeah, a great question, and definitely set those and achieve them and keep doing it.
We have some questions from the webcast. One of the questions is from Zane, and he asks, what area of your businesses do each of you dedicate most of your time to?
Yeah, unfortunately, way more than I'd like to financing, a reoccurring theme. I break it down generally into a few different areas. Financing, and again, should be less, but it's definitely a good chunk. Business development is where I would like to always spend more, and you probably never spend enough. General management and oversight of the company, which in our case is largely our operations, our technology development, other than business development. It would be a significant part as well. And I'm fortunate to have in one of my 3 founding partners a friend who's a lawyer, and that's the only. He was a friend before he was a lawyer, so that probably explains a few things. But he runs our IP, so I don't have to spend too much time worrying about our IP. But certainly, it's key in companies like ours. So I think those are probably the 4 general areas. Talent acquisition is another big one, but that's only an issue when you're actually in a hiring phase. Otherwise, it's more of a latent thing for us. We're always developing a virtual bench, meeting people, but not as active as when we're in a hiring phase. So generally, I think those 4 areas would be where I divide my time. Not quite equally, but maybe over the long run it is equal. Now it's probably a bit more on the financing side than at other times.
For me, I would say probably number 1 is the business development side. Making sure that what we are offering and what we have in the development pipeline is of value to our customers, or identifying new customers. Number 2, I would probably say it's team building. Call it that. Making sure that you've got the right team, and that you are all headed in the right direction, which can take a lot of time, and it's almost like fundraising. It takes longer than you would expect, but it always pays off to make sure that everybody is rowing in the same direction. Those are 2 of the big ones, and then kind of making sure that the development team is well coordinated with what the customers need, and typically that's a function that's referred to as product management. But that would probably be my 3rd area.
Yeah, status quo.
Yeah.
All good.
What about?
Yeah.
Okay.
And just one more question from the webcast. Have you had challenges finding talent, and like people to work on with you on your team and on a new venture, and how have you dealt with those challenges?
Yeah. I'll answer that. Yes, we have. And one of the reasons being is because when you do break new ground, when you come up with a novel technology, when you come up with an innovative type of application, it's hard to find a skill set that has done any work in that has any experience in that. Having said that, you're a logical thinker, you're committed, you're dedicated, all the key ingredients that you look for in employees, they got to have that. But when it comes down to a skill set, and in Cleantech, I think we're experiencing that because a lot of us are breaking new ground here. It comes down to, are they going to be a good employer? Are they going to be a good team player and that sort of thing? I think you can evolve their skill set. So we've gone out to universities. We've worked with Queen's University, McMaster University, University of Western Ontario. We have 2 projects underway right now with McMaster. We have a project with St. Lawrence College and another project with the Centennial College, the Ashtonby campus, just in Scarborough here, because we want to evolve that skill set and we want to help that. So, and the professors saying, well, what do you need us to do? What area should we be training in? We've won some NSERC Engage grants, as Paul mentioned, to help pay for a portion of that salary. We've got a McMaster master's student that's going to start working for us in a couple of weeks. So, you've got to help evolve that if you're in this space, because you are going to encounter that more than likely.
It's pretty good.
Covered it?
Can you speak a little bit to the testing out the market before you've got a fully baked product? And I guess specifically I'm interested on the sort of software side as opposed to, taking in some sort of model or a hard product. And how would you go about it? Like your tips and tricks and recommendations for doing that rapid type of startup?
Yeah, well, maybe we can ask you, so what's the area that you're involved in?
I am in software. I'm considering starting up a software company, and especially in the SaaS, in cloud software. And so I'm trying to figure out how do I go about testing out something without building out a full-on software suite.
And, right.
So you had mentioned earlier that you had tested out the market a bit before you had a complete product. So I was just curious to know what you did and what are some of your recommendations for doing so.
Yeah, no, and it takes a lot of thought, and it's not exactly easy. One thing to consider is whether you have to build out the exact. Number one, do you have to build out all of the features?
Right.
What are the most important features, and what's the minimum feature set that people are going to pay you to deliver? So that's one way to kind of minimize and test the market. The second one is to try to deliver the service in a different way. So not a way that's necessarily scalable. It's referred to as the concierge service, right? Which is does someone need a result that you can deliver without having to actually build the entire product,
right,
that you could then sell repeatedly?
So consulting a bit to as you're building up a software product?
It can be, but essentially being, it may be a very inefficient way of delivering it, but if you can sell to someone essentially the solution or the service or the value in some way without having to build out the entire software, then you might want to consider it. I mean, the nice thing about building out the entire software first and then going out and selling it is that all your costs are sunk, right. And then the second one is just basically pure profit in terms of the revenue that's coming in. The issue is that you may have invested a whole bunch of money in something that not a lot of people want.
Right.
So it's a trade-off. So those are things to consider. Potentially a concierge service where you're inefficiently delivering the value to a customer, but you get to validate, number one, whether it's working properly, you're delivering the value to them, how much they're willing to pay you for it, and then seeing if other people might be interested in that. At that point, then you can start just making a decision as to build it out into a full kind of SaaS model.
Great, thank you.
I have a question that's a little shifting gears. Have any of you, while you got to this position, ever thought that you wanted to quit? Like, not just jokingly, like, I need to quit, but like, I really need to quit. And how did you get yourself out of that mode?
That was at 4:30 today.
Yeah, but a few hours before that.
Yeah, last night.
Yeah. I had one of those moments back when we had those problems with our electronics that I mentioned earlier. And I'll never forget, one of my very nice and wise and experienced investors knew we were going through a course and called me up one day and said, Paul, sometimes it just doesn't work. And I thought, okay, he's probably right. But I'm stubborn, I'm an eternal optimist, and I'm going to keep trying anyway, was I guess my initial response. But I certainly thought long and hard about it because, he's a wise guy, he's right. At the time, it looked like it wasn't going to work. Lo and behold, we kept trying to pull tricks out of our bag and eventually found something that worked. So I guess moral of the story, persistence pays off, never give up, to what's been said before, all the things you've heard. And ultimately, it was probably the fact that I'm a stubborn, dyed-in-the-wool optimist that got me through it all. But yeah, I seriously thought about it. Could I actually do it? I don't know. I don't know. It's a good question. Hopefully I'll never find out. Yeah.
I always joke about plotting the number of up days and down days. And as long as I'm having more up days than down days in a certain period of time, latest 12 hours, let's say, then you keep going. But in terms of tenacity, one point about that is that tenacity is very important, I'd say. But at the same time, you also need a hell of a lot of humility because you will be turned down a ton of times. And you also, at least I think, would be valuable is the ability to basically listen with all the senses and take information in. And if you go and talk to 100 people, 100 customers, and they tell you they're not interested in what you're trying to build, you should probably listen to that. So there's a tension there between the tenacity and the ability to process feedback as well.
That's good. That's good. Okay.
Thank you. This is very good because it sounds very, very realistic. I'm just wondering, and maybe I wasn't listening carefully enough, are any of you solidly in the black? Anybody making a profit? And when do you expect to?
This is Meet the Entrepreneurs, right?
Hot
We're not
seat.
dragons here.
What is that? Is that a financial term?
Well, yes.
No.
I know you're all fulfilled. I mean, you've made that clear. You obviously love what you're doing, and I think that's wonderful. But do you have any sense of when you're going to?
There's a purchase order on the horizon, and I have to keep taking little baby steps to get to that point, but there is one there. And we have a little bit of money in the bank. I need to put some more money in there because I'd like to hire some more people. But no, not in the black. I'm in investment black. I'm not in revenue black. And we do want to get there by the end of this year.
By the end of this year, what about the other two?
So we're generating revenue right now, but talking about being in the black, when you look at the black line, that's after your R&D. And that's always, and it's also after your SG&A, which is your business development and so on. So you got to be asking yourself, is it worth, should I be investing in the next product right now? How much should I be investing based on the traction I'm getting with customers and so on? And also, how much should I be investing in, basically a sales force of some shape or form in marketing to bring in more revenue? And so, you could squeeze out a revenue. You could squeeze out your profit and be, quote, in the black. But that might not be the best decision for 2 years from now, is black, your profitability at that point. So I'm sorry to answer, but we're revenue positive, but we're making conscious decisions as to the trade-off as to how much do we actually spend in those two other categories.
And we're a licensing or IP play, so our model's a little bit different. So we don't really look at being in the black. I mean, we will be in the black after we do a deal, but it's rather lumpy type revenue recognition and with very high profitability. So we're gunning for those more specific mini exits, if you will, in various industries. So again, a different process. And we have opportunities now where we could just be a few months out to as long as I'd say a few years out. So it's relatively soon.
But when you were going for money, right, especially when you were going for the grants and went to venture capitalists, you had to be very clear about your expectations because, in my experience, they really want to see step by step how much you expect to make, right? So were you lucky enough not to have to do that, or?
No, I think you certainly have to project out your financials, and I don't think any of us are saying that we don't have that. It's just that we aren't necessarily there yet. Going back to the point on milestones, as long as you're hitting those points on the path, that's what investors want to see. Those milestones are stepping stones to ultimately the end result, but also to the financing points along the way that you need to stay solvent so you can get there.
Thank you.
And it is just one of the challenges with Cleantech as opposed to sort of the more ICT side of things. Generally speaking, Cleantech is creating something tangible that requires a lot of R&D and upfront investment in the actual technology development, and then time to prove it out as well, which it certainly makes it challenging in the financing department. So that's where it comes down to having your plan and being able to very clearly articulate your milestones, your steps to getting there, when you intend to be, revenue positive and then ultimately profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any more questions online? Any more questions from the audience? And I want to thank our panelists very much. I really appreciate you guys being here. You managed to keep me wide awake even through the jet lag, so I think it was a great conversation. We are going to head out now to a reception. So if we can let these guys make their way out so they can get a cocktail in hand, and they will then be fully ready to answer all of your questions if you have any one-on-one questions. Carrie, is there anything else that we need to?
No, I just want to thank the panelists and Jane for moderating. That was a great session. Thank you very much.